All right, so that works. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone can hear me. I think you can. Assalamu alaikum. Why is this not working? Why is it like wobbly? That's weird. Don't do that. Okay, let's try to push it back actually. Make this a little bit easier to not shake crazy because this thing is not working well. Okay. Okay. Sorry. I am just testing my new, makeshift setup here so I can see about doing this. Okay, is this actually working? Sorry. As you can see, my room is a mess because I'm just trying to figure out where to put everything. Okay. That should be sufficient for now. If I can get this thing to work. Okay, does that work? Does that work? Does it work? Okay. It still shakes. Doesn't matter. Can everyone hear me? Yes? Good. Awesome. So, well, the reason it's messy is because I literally just moved into this room. Temporary move before going out of state. And this desk that I'm using right now as a makeshift desk is not my original desk. Assalamu alaikum. So it's like this really flimsy one. So like even if I barely move it, it shakes. So it looks like an earthquake in here. So it's terrible. So yeah, if I ever do a live stream, I can't actually type because then it would just. I'm in California, yeah, it's not a good idea. So I'm just testing the connection, make sure all my stuff is working. It's very cramped in here. It stinks. But we make do with what we have. Yes, because I am occupying a different place at the moment. Because we are making the move up to Chicago, hopefully in the next few months. So I wanted to get a cheaper place in the meantime. That's also predicated on whether or not I get a better job here in Georgia, but the job market's not as good, and I do want to kind of leave Georgia because I don't like Georgia. So I'm used to the snow, so it's not an issue for me. So New Jersey, oh God, no. Salam, no offense intended. Salam to everyone in the room. Salam to Mystic Ranger. And Jake is in the room. Alhamdulillah. So, I am not going to talk about politics or anything else, so don't ask me. Please. This is just me just chilling. I'm not in California. That was a joke. Life is okay. Alhamdulillah. I put my daughter to bed. I appreciate the advice, Jake. Yes, I would not. It's not that I have anything against NJ or New Jersey. It's just, just not my style. It's like there are certain cities, there are certain places in the world that are your style, that are your vibe, I've never really vibed in the South. I've never really felt comfortable in the South ever, even though I've lived primarily in the South. I like the North better and the East Coast, certain places in the East Coast. So Chicago's always been really what I consider my home. So yeah. So yeah, can't wait to go back to Chicago. We'll see what happens. Minnesota. That's it. So yeah, this is my room now. Lovely. I'm still unpacking some stuff, so it'll look hopefully a little nicer soon, and maybe get some better lighting in here because I'll be here for a few months. And then we'll see what we do in the meantime. But yeah, I think I need to get a better desk, or at least stabilize this a little better, because I don't understand why it's moving so much. That's so weird. Okay, I need some better supports. This is a terrible desk, but it works. I mean, it functions. So, what else is going on? Do you like organizing stuff? Yes. Yes, I'm an organizer by a habit. Oh, this is guava, by the way. Jazakallah khair. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I still intend to do some like intellectual discussions maybe in the future without actually promoting my channel or anything. This channel is still going to stay closed, but I may be jumping on some places here and there just to like talk, just because I like doing that. As it's only for my own intellectual entertainment, I guess you could say. So I like open discourse and dialogue. So that's what's going to happen. It'll be really random. I may decide to do it one day and maybe not another day, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. This is not like a project or anything. I'm literally was bored one day and I was like, hey, yeah, let's talk about this stuff. Because people are asking me to talk about stuff. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. But I'm not going to advertise. I'm not going to ask for money. I'm not going to have super chats or anything, and I'm not going to have a Patreon. So don't worry, you don't have to send me money. I'm just randomly going to come on sometimes and be like, hey, so this topic, we're going to talk, and then I'm going to leave. And then you will forget me like I'm a ghost, which is fine. Minneapolis, not yet. Assalamu alaikum. So if you, whatever. Yeah, it's not the background. It's a different place. I am currently still in Georgia, yeah. Vanilla. Do I drink roof? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what that is even. Honestly, I don't remember. Sorry. It's a joke, and I fell for it. I don't know. I'm so ignorant. Assalamu alaikum. The Ramadan drink? No, I have not done a live stream with video yet, because when we were planning to do live stream, I had to like do some stuff with the moving, and it took like all day. Like, okay, so literally, I have not had a break ever since like I go to work, then I come home and I move stuff, and then I go to sleep. That's what I've been doing like every day, even on the weekends. I've been reading a lot of stuff lately, but I don't want to divulge what that is yet. Yes, adulting. No, I got some people messaging me earlier about the whole Vidu thing. And I understand some people's concerns, but I have to reiterate, the only reason that I'm even interested in is the same reason that we had a discussion before about, you remember when we had that whole, like, it wasn't really a debate, it was more like a dialogue back and forth about Islam and stuff like that. He's asking me questions. To me, it's a similar thing. It's just intellectual discourse. I do this every day when I'm in university. I talk to people with different beliefs every single day as a librarian. And I guess maybe I have a different mindset about this, because for me, it's just like, as part of my job, I have to be neutral, not like necessarily about my values, but about what people are saying, because my job as an educator is not to tell them what to think and what to do. My job as an educator is to teach them and to give them sources and references and to help them and to guide them, in terms of how they understand things. So my whole thing is about access to information, free speech, and essentially like how to learn, right? So when I have like this discussions like about philosophy and stuff, that's literally what I'm doing, is just trying to teach people. So maybe some of you are like thinking that like if I have a discussion with Vidu, I'm gonna like do this stuff that's been going on lately, like all this drama, and I'm gonna like talk about, like, I'm just gonna bash people and stuff, or I'm gonna make it like, no, that's not what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna be like, that's wrong, or that's wrong, that's correct. Here's the reason why. Here's the arguments that are being used. Here's the philosophical background. Here's whether or not, it's correct. And, so this is all I'm going to do. That's literally all I'm doing. So like, I think some people need to kind of chill out. It's like, because if we get upset about that, then there's something wrong, right? It's, yeah. Oh, I'm currently playing this amazing game that I didn't realize that I was going to like. And I'm going to type it in the chat. See, you're going to watch my screen shake. Maybe it wasn't for you. I liked it a lot. Remains of the Day touched me a lot because it really spoke to me in terms of certain values that I hold. Sharon the Wanderer. Switch. So that game I just played. I'm playing recently. I can't stop playing it. It's like a mystery dungeon thing, but it's like seriously like difficult and just fun. And it has really kooky characters and awesome items and stuff. I can't explain it. Just go watch it. You may not like it. Some people don't like the mystery dungeon type, like roguelike type stuff, but I didn't think I would either. And then I started playing it and I was like, I like this game. How much is the chair? There's like $200 or something. How do I train myself? Oh, it's I practice like this distancing technique. So essentially, like, okay, so if somebody says something to me, and I do it even when I have like debates and discussions with people in private, which I think is another reason that a lot of people don't like to debate me, to be honest, because I just kind of sit there and look at them and do anything, and just wait until they're done, and then I talk. And they can't judge me. They don't see me get emotional, so it's like they get really frustrated. That happened with Secular Jihadist. Anyways, that was a different thing altogether. So, like, oh yes, this is definitely yes, a gaming chair. Even if you're not a gamer, you should get a gaming chair. Yes, that's a given. That's a given. Okay, just trust me. You will never go back to another chair. Okay, so, but I personally wouldn't recommend leather. Some people like the leather ones or the pleather ones. I like the cloth ones. They're easier to clean and they're just more comfortable. Okay. So yeah, trust me, gaming chair is worth it. So what I was going to say was that, so how do I distance myself? So what I do is I actually, when somebody starts saying things like that I don't agree with or that I might find contentious, I think about it as like a game, a puzzle. And I kind of remove the statement from the person. And I literally assume that what is being said is like what I'm reading in a book or something. Because when you read a book, right, you don't really get upset at the book. If you see objections, you may disagree, but you're not like angry because you're not seeing a person there. It's just a wall of text, right? Maybe some people do, but me, I'm just like, whatever. So that's kind of how I see it. Is like, okay, they said this thing. How do I navigate that? And how do I present my case in a way that is welcoming to them and that kind of, what's the word, like, disarms them, disarms their emotions. Now, it's also helpful being in an academic environment because I'm technically a professor. So like the students they're not rude to me when they bring up stuff. So it's kind of funny, actually. This shows you how old I'm getting, by the way. Is like I was in like the cafeteria area, where you want to call the break area for the students, and they were eating, and I was just reading a book and drinking some coffee because I was on break and I already ate. And I usually spend my time in there because they have these nice little sofas, and I just read my books there. And they're getting really rowdy, right? And I don't have to say anything. This is I guess this is how old I look, I just like raised my head when I was reading my book, and I looked over at them, and then they saw me looking at them. They're like, "Oh, sorry, sir, sorry," and I was like, "It's fine, just keep it down." So it's like I've reached that stage in my life now where I'm officially an adult. Right, 18-year-olds are calling me sir and thinking that I'm old. All right, that's terrible. Okay, so now it's like when you only have to look at a kid or a young person and they just stop, then you know you're old. Yeah, I missed my previous setup too. It was amazing. I had this massive desk. It was like huge, bigger than this one, obviously, twice the size. I could put all my stuff on it. It's hard. I mean, look, there's no reason to get emotional about anything, to be honest with you. I mean, in terms of what people say, you have to understand that. Yes, unless they're like trying to make you angry, obviously, I think that can trigger some people. Sometimes that makes me a little bit upset because when I know that they're trying to do it, then I'm like, okay, you want to play, then we'll play. But when it's like you can tell that the person sincerely believes a certain thing and they're just trying to like understand, or they think they actually have a valid criticism, then all you can do is like, why are you getting angry? You know what I mean? Because look, you have to see it from their perspective too. It's like, why do they believe the way that they do? Where are they coming from? And if you really want to like help them to understand, you can't get mad at them, right? Because at some point, I guess this is better. This is easier to understand as a convert, right, or as a revert, right? Like if you didn't revert, it's a little bit more difficult because that's kind of the ideology you kind of stayed with your whole life, that belief system. But if you're a revert, it's a little easier to understand because you understand where that other perspective is coming from. You know what I mean? And then you sympathize with your own experience, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I see where you're coming from, but this is why you're wrong. And it's kind of easier not to get mad, right? Um, so I think it's like you need to put yourself in their shoes the best way you can, because not everyone is angry or upset or wants to insult you. Now, you got a bunch of trolls online. Yeah, they behave like that constantly. But the most normal people, like sane people, like people without trauma or issues in life, they're not going to like approach you and just start yelling at you and, you know, making rude comments. Um, Long-term self-education is to constantly challenge yourself. I think one of the problems, especially among Muslims, and I say this a lot, is that we don't engage with other ideas and philosophies in a way that is fair. I think a lot of times, and it's not everyone, but I think a lot of Muslims are looking for very simple and simplified framings of certain ideas and ideologies from the Islamic perspective that are simply critical without actually examining the breadth of those traditions and whether or not your perspective on them is too narrow or too broad, maybe even. So like this whole thing about liberalism and secular humanism and stuff like that. When I teach like al-Balagh courses, I always give a disclaimer to my students. I said, I'm not here to give you propaganda. I'm not here to tell you that I'm not here. The purpose of me being here is not to tell you that Islam is awesome. I'm sorry. You should already know that. If you want to talk about why Islam's awesome, we can do that. My job is to tell you the facts, you know, and I'll talk about feminism and stuff, and I'll talk about like where they're coming from, the history of the ideas, some of the positive things that they've discussed, some of the positive reasons that they came up with certain ideas, you know, some of the legitimate reasons they came up with certain ideas. And then of course I'll discuss the problems too. Like I'll discuss why this is not conform with Islam and things like that. But I'll never be like, oh, this is all crap. You know, it's all just, you know, all these people are evil. It's, you know, Muslims are the best. Allahu Akbar. You know, it's just, why do that? I think it's disingenuous, and I feel like a lot of Muslims are being deceived through this sort of lazy thinking. We should be able to analyze ideas as they are, and if our ideas are stronger, then they simply will be. Right? You don't need to mischaracterize perspectives or oversimplify to the point where it's ludicrous. Right? Like, so for example, assuming that individualism and secular humanism is just hedonism. It's just hedonism. That's what happiness means. When in fact, if you look at numerous secular humanist thinkers and even like just non-theistic thinkers in general, you'll find that hedonism is oftentimes not the goal or not the essence of happiness. Like it's actually a lot of other things. Like Stoicism does not regard happiness as hedonism. In fact, it's completely contrary to that. So things like that that doesn't make any sense. So we have to be careful and accurate with our assessments of things, even if it may take more time and energy. Unfortunately, we have a lot of Muslims who are just, and not just Muslims. I don't mean to pick on us entirely, although I will be harsher because I feel like we should have better standards. But I think the whole world is like this. Everyone is just intellectually lazy now. Most people, and like they just want really quick, like 2-minute answers. Like, no, just tell me what this is. Black and white. I want to know, is it black or white? Is it black or white? Well, it's kind of gray. No, it's like, no, that's not how it works. That's not life. You're not 4 years old, right? You don't need a black and white answer. What you need to know is the truth. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, so now I'm gonna see what everyone said. I think that is a correct assessment. That's a good quote, actually, Ross. The purpose between Vito is because I think he's very sincere. To be quite honest with you, I think he's very sincere when it comes to discussing ideas, and I don't think he has any sort of deceptive bone. And he's not perfect by any means. No, none of us are. Neither am I, obviously. But I don't think he purposely goes out of his way to be disingenuous. And I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of Muslims, and I'm just being frank, I mentioned this to them too. I think they're quite either cowardly or they're more concerned about the optics of criticizing people who have appeared to have won a discussion because they don't want to diminish the pride or the motivation that has been, cultivated within the people who watch those debates. Whereas my philosophy is very different. It's like, I don't care if we win or not. What I care about is honor. I would have preferred that we lose, but with honor, than win with fraud. So that is my perspective. So if an individual wishes to discuss the facts of something, then I will indulge them. That's it. Where would you say you fall? I don't know where I fall on the political spectrum. I really don't care, to be honest with you. That's for different discussions. I would say that there are some sincere ex-Muslims that I have met, and the reason I'm also I'm aware of this is because you have to understand. A lot of you don't know this, but I counsel a lot of young people who consider themselves ex-Muslims or who have left the faith. So how would I be able to do my job and help them if I thought they were all evil or insincere or stupid or something? Like these kids have legitimate concerns and questions, right? You have to, talk to them like normal people. Right? Like, well, I don't consider Vito to be a career ex-Muslim anymore, or even if he was. I mean, he was always quite. He's a very private person now. I mean, he just recently came back on his channel. He had two kids recently, so he's in his daddy mode right now, and he's trying to be a decent father. I think he just released kind of some little videos here and there to kind of like poke fun at certain people, but other than that, I don't think he wants to come back to make money or anything, at least as far as I'm aware. The thing is, I know him a little bit closer than some people do. I also know his father pretty closely because we've had a lot of like private discussions. So, and if if I truly believed Vidu was being deceptive or he was a dishonest person, I wouldn't even talk to him. Like there are people for a fact that like I won't talk to like somebody like Apostate Prophet anymore, because I think he's a disingenuous individual to his very core. I was entertaining him for a little while because he had his anxiety issues and he was always talking about mental health and stuff. And I was like, okay, fine. If this is the reason why, then fine. And then eventually, I just kind of like I was like, no more. You're obviously there's not just a mental emotional issue. There's like a character issue here. And I was like, bye. Same thing with Abdullah Samir. I can't stand him. I think he's a very disingenuous person. So I'm very clear about that. So I mean, it's not like I'm just randomly doing this. So Harris Sultan definitely is very disingenuous. I mean, no, he's like at the bottom of the barrel. Oh, I have to see if that's true. I haven't seen any latest videos, so I'll look. Solid. I can't even do. Can I do the voice anymore? Solid Rock Man. I can't do it anymore. It's a Solid Rock Man. See, there you go. I did it finally. Not yet. All right, everyone. We can be a solid rock together. I haven't done impressions in a while, so I have to get it back. Yeah. Give me money and you can be as solid as a rock like me. Those weren't very good commercials. I don't think he realized. I think maybe that's why he stopped doing that thing, because he realized it was bad advertising. I don't think he thought about it the first time he said that. He's like, solid as a rock. It's like, yeah, I don't know what you're selling. But I have a few guesses. Okay. Anyways. I haven't actually read How to Read a Book. Well, I think, I agree with you. The ex-Muslim movement has lost all relevance for a reason. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it simply didn't resonate with a lot of people. The reality was, and I think this is unfortunate, to be honest with you, because I think that a lot of them were taken advantage of, and maybe some of them deserved it because they were very disingenuous. Not all of them, though, but most of them, at least the ones that we saw on the scene, is that the reason they didn't succeed is because the only real reason that they were successful to begin with was because a lot of Islamophobes, like especially Christian types, took advantage of them and gave them a platform. And once they got bored and didn't need them anymore, that was it. So it's like they didn't realize that they were simply being used for hate. And then their whole thing was like, well, we're just trying to normalize doubt. Well, it's like, so because again, this goes back to everything that I've said before, even among the Muslims. It's like when you're a reactionary, you're not going to last very long, because your whole entire philosophy or your entire movement is based on what you're against and not what you're for. And if you can't build anything, then you're not going to go anywhere, right? And that's also the same reason that we're going to see the fall of many other movements online, especially among the Muslim community, like the alt-right and stuff, which people think, well, that's a made-up term. That doesn't actually point to anything. Actually, it does, because what the alt-right initially was an alternative, or the alt-right was an alternative far-right movement following some sort of Western traditional values, and it had this homogenous like culture versus the outsiders, and it constantly picked on certain types of minorities, and it emphasizes the same issues while simultaneously opposing what it considers to be the liberal project. Now, whether or not you agree with certain aspects of that, that's up to you. But the point is, I think it's extremely accurate to call them the alt-right, because they simply co-opted that movement and just put Islam there. So where the alt-right would be more about white nationalism primarily, the alt-right is about Muslim supremacy within a democratic system, which is strange. Even though they won't explicitly state that, a lot of the terminology and sort of the things that they use to justify their points is very similar. So now I'm ranting. That's why New Atheism failed. And ultimately, a lot of the New Atheists, as I noted on Sabur Ahmed's podcast, was that they kind of went into two different directions, right? Some became more like alt-rightish, and some, like they went to the Jordan Peterson route, and then some became like these somewhat like New Age. Some became more religious again. Because once you, like I said, if you define yourself by simply what you aren't, eventually you have to do introspection, right? You have to be like, okay, well, what am I? And then that's when the splinters start to show. And then they start to be infighting, and then they start hating each other, and then they just like break apart because they realize they don't actually like each other at all. So it's easy to unite on things that you hate, but it's not easy to unite on things that you love. So it's good to start with the latter than the former. So now you're seeing a lot of these atheists that are still kind of thriving on the scene is because they don't define themselves like that anymore. They mostly define themselves as like secular humanists, like Matt Dillahunty, for example. He's not really, he's an atheist, but he primarily defines himself by what he is. And then you have like some other people like Alex O'Connor. He doesn't really define himself as an atheist. He's mostly like about his veganism and other stuff that I don't remember. Omar Soleiman has been rooted a lot of times. You just don't see it a lot. You look at his Facebook, he goes after people a lot. Not like obsessively, but he'll react accordingly if he needs to. And if you make Omar Soleiman mad, then you've done something wrong, because Omar Soleiman is one of the most calmest people in the world that I've ever met. Salam alaikum warahmatullah. I have to be careful because, again, I judge people by their sincerity. So certain ideas are going to appear as to be mocking as well, regardless of whether they are intended to be so or not. But I would prefer to speak, if I'm using like this whole, not utilitarianism, but if I'm saying one is better than the other, I would say that there are certain Muslims online, certain du'at online, who insult the religion more than he does. To be quite frank, through their behavior. So, that would be my answer to that. I also think that it's, again, problematic I think that's the best thing to say. that's pretty much what I would say. Pondering Spirit. Hello. Salam. 9/11 2.0 watershed moment. Actually, this is whole. I mean, I really don't want to talk about it, to be honest, because there's not a lot that I know right now, and I'm trying to keep my mouth shut until there's more information. I already have certain positions that I hold that I have not strayed away from, and you're already aware of that, but I'm not going to comment on the details of this recent conflict. I will say one thing, though, and this is something that I told a brother recently. I said this as something that I do not want to happen, but I can only foresee as happening because of current events. I foresee that Israel is going to use this conflict, or what they have accused Hamas of, as the final justification for what they've always wanted to do. And I think this time it's not going to simply be bombs. I don't think it's going to be a few weeks of bombing Gaza. I think this time they are legitimately going to try to destroy Gaza and just completely conquer it. From what I've seen, I think that is what they're going to do. And that is not something that I, you know, I don't know if you guys heard me correctly. May Allah protect the Palestinians and all the innocent people, but I truly believe that Israel is now going to go all out, and it's not going to be good. And I feel like, and I told the brother this, and he's like, "Well, what are you supposed to do?" And I said, "Well, the Muslims aren't going to do anything. That's really what's going to happen." And the thing is, the only thing that you can do is make a better future so that this doesn't happen again. Because we're going to have to take the shame of this defeat, and we're going to have to use that as motivation for this not to happen again. Because obviously, we as an ummah are not strong enough or motivated enough to build ourselves back up to protect them. And that is our fault. And as painful as that may sound and feel, that will hopefully be a wake-up call for us to make sure that the future is much brighter. Because I honestly, based just on what, I mean, maybe there's a miracle Allah will bring down, I don't know. But based on what I'm currently seeing, this is it. And this is going to be there's going to be a new phase in all of this. So, that's all I have to say about that. I mean, if you look at the international community is all behind Israel. Israel has all the technology, all the weapons. It would literally take a miracle for Hamas or the Palestinians to win this. And at this point, that's not going to happen. So if they want to, they could. I mean, at this point, with everyone as angry as they are, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were just like, yeah, let's go after the West Bank too, and just take the whole thing. So I'm not going to say anything else. All I'm saying is basically what I'm seeing from as high as I can in terms of like objectively. I'm not looking at details. I'm just looking at, okay, how many people are there? Who's dying the most? Who has the most weapons? What is Israel saying? What is the international community saying? And at this point, it looks like this isn't like the previous years. This is worse. Now it's like, okay, now they feel with the recent attack by Hamas, they're talking like, okay, this time we're not gonna, like, this is it. We're done. You know what I mean? This is not like, oh, we're gonna retaliate. No, this is like, no, we're gonna wipe you out. And they're like really open about it. And everyone else is like, yeah, this is very different. Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm not trying to sit here and make you all feel bad. I'm just telling you, like, you need to prepare for that in the next few weeks. Okay, so please don't be mad at me. I'm not trying to be pessimistic for the sake of it. I'm just trying to say, hey, negative energy. There's no negative energy, man. There just is. I guess I'm just saying it like it is, but I'm not doing it to make points or anything. I'm just telling you guys, like, if the Ummah is going to wake up, we need to actually start swallowing the truth and not hearing things that make us feel proud. I know that's maybe sounds strange to you, but like there's a lot of dawah now that's like, we're here to make the Muslims feel proud. But what is the point of pride if there's nothing left to be proud in? If the pride doesn't lead anywhere, if the pride doesn't produce anything, if the pride is just for you to walk down the street and be like, yeah, I'm a Muslim, I'm great, yay. And then tomorrow, nothing changes. What's the point of that? I mean, sometimes we have to be told that we're losing and that we're weak, because maybe that's the real motivation that men and women need, real men and women need to actually change something. But if you're being constantly told that you're perfect, you're great, you're amazing, you're better than that person over there, what's that going to do? You know, like I don't change my life because people are telling me how great I am. I change my life because people are telling me there's something wrong with me. Right? Yeah, we talk a lot about the past, but we never build anything towards the future. The corn going through. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Ben Shapiro will say all this stuff. A lot of people say it because they can. They can say it. You have to understand, yes, it's disturbing, but the fact that they can say it and they're a position of power should be more concerning to you than what they're saying. Does that make sense? Like, that showcases where we really are. Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of, no offense, I'm sorry, a lot of young Muslims online are shouting and screaming and, you know, Allahu Akbar, Palestine, and, you know, the Ummah will succeed and we will be victorious. And it's like, yeah, but what are you doing? You're on the internet all day. I mean, what? What are you doing? Like, nothing. You really are doing nothing, honestly. I mean, no offense. I mean, it's okay to get your emotions out, but if you think you're doing something, you're not doing anything. And the same people who complain are the ones who want to go into the West and go to schools in the West and universities and make money over there. And I mean, I'm not trying to say they're hypocrites necessarily. I'm just saying, like, the fact that they're in that position showcases how weak they are. Oh no, that's another thing. OKH. Oh my God, don't get me started. Okay, you just got me started. I love this. Is like, oh yeah, but if we have more kids, we'll win. Who said this? Where is this in Islam? Where in our theology is this true? Like, have you read the Hadith? No, I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about somebody else said this. It's like, have you read the Hadith? It'll say that we'll be more numerous than what, the grains of sand, and we'll still be overpowered. Numbers aren't going to do nothing. It's not about numbers. You could have 10 kids. Every Muslim family have 10 kids, and we still get our butts kicked. In the position that we're in right now, we could outnumber every human being on the planet as a community, and we'd still lose. I mean, what are you talking about? You can also think about, like, I mean, yes, the Prophet ﷺ said you should have a lot of kids, but like you should also think about that in a nuanced way too. It's like, think of economic factors, think of, education factors. It's like, just having children is not, if you're not raising your kids, like if you're just, you know, just having them and you're not giving any sort of quality education or quality instruction or quality raising, then what are you doing? You're just producing more human beings that ultimately may not even be practicing people. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, I don't buy all this stuff. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, all this stuff that's like floating around online now, from Muslims saying all this stuff. I always face palm because I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? What is anything that you're saying? How does that help anyone? Why are people attracted to this stuff? Like, it just feels like you're just like, it's like a Netflix show that people are obsessed with. And then they finally, when the show's over, they realize they're in reality again and they have to start their day or they have to go to work. Right. It feels like that's what is happening right now. It's like, I'm watching this great show, I'm on season 3. You got to see it. That's what it feels like. And then ultimately, like, nothing gets done after that. The show ends, or eventually will end. The last season will come, and then the Muslims will look around and be like, "Oh, I gotta go to work now." It's like, I don't know if that's a good analogy, but that's what it feels like. Read more, Iman. Read a lot. Reading will help you to think more clearly. It'll also help you to articulate, and it'll give you a greater vocabulary, greater sense of grammar. Practice speaking in front of people. Don't necessarily adopt the local lingo. Learn the formal language. Yeah, that would be my advice. Listen to great speakers too. I'm not writing for anyone. The nutrition rabbit hole? No. I don't like going down rabbit holes. They get really cramped. And I don't like that. How else you can help? There's a lot of ways we can help. It's going to be long. It's going to take a long time. The first thing we can do is actually produce educational institutions that rival and are better than Western ones. That would be a great first step. And we have a lot of money. We can do it. But for some reason, we can't. Like, nobody wants to. That's a problem. Like, if you made educational institutions that actually produce research and scientists and thinkers in general that actually helped the world and did stuff, and that you didn't need Muslims, like, you didn't have your own populations leaving your country to go somewhere else, that would be a first great step. Pay teachers well, pay your educated people better. Don't invest so much money into sports and tall buildings, or lavish nonsense. Like, well, the reason that these people are liberals because these institutions that are good in these places are just basically copy and paste of liberal institutions. Dr. Faruqi, also Syed Naqib al-Attas, who you should also be familiar with, Muslim apologist. I mean, like, I think Arab countries, especially, like, they spend more money on sporting events and fancy architecture than they do on their own universities, or even trying to build an Islamic school that can rival anything. You're not a Tassian. I did forget about that. Yes, but like, if you really want to change the Ummah in a positive direction, get Westerners to come to our schools instead of the other way around. Stop the intellectual drain, the brain drain in our own countries. You have a lot of educated very intelligent Bangladeshis and Pakistanis and Indians and Arabs in general and Malaysians and Indonesians, all leaving their countries to go over to the United States, Canada, or Europe to get education and then to work there and make lots of money. Well, I wasn't originally Malaysian, so I had to leave. So, so if you want to build your society, your most successful people in terms of, science and knowledge, and they can't leave. They shouldn't leave. Like, you know, that's a problem. They're taking all the talent, like even Malaysia. I speak of Malaysia specifically now. A lot of really educated, like really talented brothers and sisters, engineers, astrophysicists, are working for NASA, which is great for them. But why doesn't Malaysia have its own program? You have all these really talented astrophysicists and like engineers, and they're leaving. Like, what, that doesn't help. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we don't have the weapons to fight. Yeah, because all the people who could develop your weapons are developing them over there. Hello? Like, come on, man. I mean, I'm giving you like practical guidelines here. Obviously, it's also become more religious, become more educated in religion, obviously. Yes, we all know that. But if you're talking about like the reason why there's a huge gap materially and economically between the West and the East, that's the reason. That's one of the reasons. Do you have a hypocritical existence? And what does that even mean? It's okay to want what's good for yourself too. I'm not even saying that the people who leave their home countries and go to the West are necessarily bad people. Right? I'm not saying that. Everyone has a right and to have dignity and respect for themselves and their families and want to raise their families and provide for them. Right. The problem is the Muslim governments and our societies in general do not provide these things for our people. They just let them go. Like it's expected now. Oh, after 12 years of education, then you guys are going to leave. If you're good, if you get good grades, you can go to Harvard. It's like, why don't we have a Harvard? What? Why not? I mean, the Sultan can own, he can make all these big buildings and, try to get the World Cup to come over and, bring all these businesses over. And, he buys all these yachts and makes these massive palaces. But for some reason, we can't have a nice school. The hell? Like what? So we can't pay doctors enough money. We can't pay teachers enough money to survive. Like, it's even that culture. Even it comes over here too. You have a lot of Western Muslims. They open up private schools here. A lot of you know what I'm talking about. If you live in the UK, you live in Europe in general, you live in the United States and Canada, you know this. Muslim private schools, how much do teachers get paid? How much do the teachers get paid? Do they stay there very long? Does anyone want to pay them? You have to beg the community, the masjid community, to give salaries to these people. Where there are Islamic private schools in the West, teachers like leave. They'll stay there maybe for a year and they have to leave because they're not getting paid enough. They get paid more to work at Starbucks than they get than teaching. Well, if you paid more, then you would get higher quality teachers too, right? It's like, we can raise money for, and again, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but we tend to raise more money for like other communities overseas than we do for our own people. We tend to raise money for making the masjid bigger than for, paying our teachers. It's like, it's just our priorities are like, I don't know. Yeah, that's another problem. Governments don't really support the universities. Or if they do support them, it's for research that doesn't really have as much relevance as I think it does. Yeah, there are wallahi, there are imams, people who studied for years getting ijazat, who come over to the US and they have to negotiate with the masjid board about having a living salary, because these people will literally argue. A lot of these uncles that I'm going to point out, because I've heard these conversations too. They'll be like, well, brother, we will respect you, but you must do this for the sake of Allah. Allah will bring you bread from the sky. We do not have to pay you at all. You just give khutbah 24/7, and then Allah will pay you. Okay. I know I'm exaggerating there, but this is literally kind of somewhat their justifications. You know, it's ridiculous how much imams are supported in this community. They barely are. We must help the ummah. In the meantime, I will buy a new Lexus. The masjid board guys are always like these doctors who make a lot of money, and they're telling the imam that and the teachers that they have to just like live off peanuts. That's just really ridiculous. No, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. I'm not even exaggerating. There are literally like retail workers who get paid more than our imams and our teachers. And you have to have, and it's great when they do these, like they post like the requirements for these jobs. They're like, oh, teach at our private Islamic school, you need at least a master's degree, or you need at least a bachelor's or something with this much years of teaching experience, and we're going to pay you $12 an hour. Is that okay? How much does all these ideologies of neoliberalism have to do with the stagnation of Muslims? Absolutely nothing. Controversial statement. Absolutely nothing. No ideology has to do with the stagnation of Muslims. No country, no government, no people has anything to do with the stagnation of Muslims but Muslims themselves. That's it. Allah is allowing all this stuff to happen because we screwed up. When did we start declining materially? Probably around the 1800s. It started earlier than that, but it really came into effect around the 1800s. So the 19th century. No, it's not the printing press. That's really a fiction. Trust me. It was really, I think, had to do with the standardized education of the Ottoman Empire during the 17th to 18th century, when they started to adopt a lot of older modes of thought from Western civilization, ones that were already overturned by previous Muslim scholars during our golden age. So I think that the reformation of the education system within the Ottoman Empire was the primary means of decline materially and intellectually within our ummah. And I wrote a paper about this. Well, I wrote part 1, but I've discussed my findings for part 2 that I probably will never write. But I'm not really writing anything right now. They were actually teaching Aristotelianism, Aristotelian physics, during the same time that Descartes, that everyone was following Cartesianism in Europe. which was the birth of modern science. So it's like they were like, well, we want to compete, so let's go back to Aristotle. It's like, why? But okay. So that's why the Ottoman Empire, during the latter half of the latter part of it, prior to its complete collapse, was most of the works from scholars, or the intellectual elite, if you want to call them that, was on logic, which they made a lot of advancements in logic, but it was all primarily about abstractions in logic. It most of it had nothing to do with the physical world. Like, they really started to go towards a much more abstract route. Whereas, during that time, the Enlightenment was going on, scientific revolutions and stuff like that in Europe. So, which was, led to our downfall, because then they started getting better weapons, better technology, and we couldn't compete. We had to start buying from other Europeans just to compete with the Europeans we were fighting. So didn't work out too well. The far right is done right now in terms of what they currently are. I think the United States has finally gotten sick or at least most people have gotten sick and tired of the alt-right movement. I think Trump is definitely going to lose in the next election. Progressivism has won for the time being. That's just how it's going to be for a little while. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years, but I'm pretty sure Trump's going to lose. Yeah. The Republican Party is in shambles. They've destroyed themselves completely. They just went too extreme. They have a lot of really stupid people. So what could we have done to prevent the decline? By continuing a more pragmatic tradition and not wiping away the autonomy of many scientists. Because although scientists could still perform what they were doing, they could still do what they were doing. If they didn't follow the new standardized Ottoman curriculum, they were generally not supported with grants or research grants, and they weren't published. So it wasn't like censorship per se, but it was like they just weren't as supported as they were in the past, because they did not conform to the Aristotelian models. Because you have to understand, a lot of scientific breakthroughs in the Golden Age were not because of Aristotle. It was because, despite him, it was because they were opposing Aristotelian physics. That's the reason that they advanced a lot of the things that we did, especially in astronomy and medicine. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Yeah, you can't prevent prophecy. Yep. Even to be quite honest, it's like when you look at like the current Dawa scene and stuff, and you see like how a lot of the sort of willful ignorance and spectacle is the primary means by which people engage in how they learn about Islam and stuff, and how they even follow Islam. Like, that's why you get people like Sneeko and Tate and all of them becoming Muslims now, because they love the whole spectacle of it all, and the extreme sort of notions of what they believe are kind of inherent in what they, or at least they think are inherent in Islam. This very boyish understanding of manhood, things like that, right? Is because it does relate to a prophecy. Because if you look at the prophecies that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made regarding how the Ummah is going to digress in terms of its knowledge, is that scholars will start to die. We're seeing a lot of scholars passing away now, right? And that a lot of ignorant people are going to rise and start giving fatwa, start giving knowledge to people, right? And these people are going to be ignorant leading the ignorant, right? And that's what you're seeing in the Dawa scene right now. Is kind of is this a lot of lay people who, frankly, don't know what they're talking about, or know how to talk well about those things, are leading a lot of young people who are likewise don't know what they're talking about. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a scholar, or a lot of people that I follow are necessarily scholars, but I'm saying that the whole tradition has been flipped on its head. Like, no longer people care about like our scholarly tradition. They don't. Like, you can present a scholarly opinion, and if it's not based, then they will literally diss that scholar. Um, it's like I've never seen this amount of disrespect towards knowledge before among our community. Sorry, I'm trashing Sneak Up. He's still very boyish. Boy, very boy. He needs to stop with his antics. None of us are perfect, but I think I feel like he goes out of the way to do stupid things. He lets the algorithm and his audience control him more than he allows the religion to control him. That's the problem. Same thing with Tate. I actually made a joke recently, and it was true though, where it's like, somebody posted Tate saying like, "Oh, the only thing that you can know now is that Allah is one and worthy of worship, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, he's the last messenger." And he wrote this on his Twitter or something, and somebody posted on Facebook, and I posted below that, and I said, 2 hours later, proceeds to film himself walking around with half naked women in a pool, and I got a lot of, because it's like, that's actually what happens. It wasn't even an exaggeration. He does that all the time, right? He'll say something Islamic, and then suddenly he'll film himself smoking a cigar with like literally half naked women around him, like rubbing his chest or something. And it's just like, bro, like, come on, like, what is this? I'm not making this stuff up. It literally happens. He is also half naked for some reason. Like, why do you have to be half naked all the time? It's not hot there. Come on, bro. Like, it's Eastern Europe. What do you do? Right? Like, he's near Russia, for God's sake. Why is he walking around with his shirt all the time? Like, what's wrong with you? Bro, like, it's like, could you imagine? I love it, and I'm sorry, I'm critical of this, but it's like, all these young kids, and they're kids. They're just like, oh yeah, he's such a man. He's a Chad. It's like, could you imagine? Well, like, could you imagine Omar, Omar bin Khattab or Khalid bin Walid behaving that way? Like, grown men behaving that way? Could you, like, don't? I'm not trying to insult. I'm just like, could you imagine? Like, would you even dare disrespect their image or their memory with that? With that, with even trying to conceive of the possibility of that? Or would you be like, astaghfirullah? If you're going to go astaghfirullah, then why do you think that these people are exemplifying manhood and Muslim male behavior? They shouldn't, but I've seen it. Actually, I've seen tweets like that. I think he's making them feel that their worth is something in superficialities. And as they get older, if they internalize a lot of those superficialities, they're going to realize the hard way that that's not the way to be a man, or a good father, for that matter. I think it's very. I don't like using the word toxic, although it does fit here. But I think that if they internalize some of those behaviors, they're not going to treat their wives appropriately, or they're going to learn the hard way that their wife is not going to stand for that behavior and will leave them, or at the very least they'll have a very unhappy marriage, right? And their children are not going to respect them for behaving that way either, especially their female children. Because trust me, as a father of a daughter, my daughter's very young, but you can tell that she comes to me for warmth and for comfort and for protection. She looks at me, she'll say daddy, and she runs up to me and she treats me like I'm her safety net. Okay. And she expects me to take care of her, right? And if you behave like a grown child, can you really be that for your daughter? I'm just saying, like, that's is that really what you want to present to her? Is that the kind of man that you want her to be with? I think that honestly, I think uh, one of the biggest remedies for a lot of these kids online is if they get married, inshallah, that and they have daughters, I think that will completely destroy everything. I'm just being frank, because there is nothing for those of you who may have children and have a daughter. I think you understand exactly what I'm saying. Many of you maybe not in here do not have daughters, but if you do, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's impossible for or if you have a baby sister or something, if you're not completely evil, yeah, then this should work, right? So there are some people who are really just evil, but there is something about having a daughter that changes you as a man in a way that is very positive, in a way that makes you feel like nobody else's opinion matters about you except for her. Does that, I know that's strange maybe, but it's like you want her to always approve of you. You don't care what anyone else thinks, just what your daughter thinks. And it's like, yeah, I can't even explain further than that. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, so it's like you feel like, yeah, it's hard to explain. And I see a lot of these young guys online who talk bad about women all the time, and I can either tell one of two things: like they're not married, or they don't have daughters. And if they end up having both of those, then they're probably psychotic. Okay, because it's like you can't sit here and be just like dissing women all day and saying they're all stupid and be looking at your daughter at the same time, unless you're a psychopath like David Wood. Okay, like that. It's the only way. Like, I'm sorry. Like, um, uh, I've been here way too long, but it seems like my system here works. So that's good. Do I think that having a daughter blinds you to the reality of many Western women? No. I think that I have had, let me say this. How do I say this in a kosher way, a halal way, without it coming off wrong? I think I've had a lot of experience engaging with women in the West as a Westerner, since I've lived in the West most of my life. I am a Westerner. Um, and I've seen a lot of young women, students, and the youth in general, where I can confidently say that a lot of things that are said are often extreme exaggerations. And while there are problems among both men and women in the West, especially among the youth, I don't. I'm sorry, I just do not see a lot of things a lot of these people talk about online. I see a lot of genuine confusion in many things, and I see a lot of genuine curiosity in a lot of things. But I genuinely believe that a lot of young men and women honestly want what is best for themselves and other people. And they're not like all a bunch of whores and mischievous, ignorant, you know, like some of them obviously may be lost, but they're not like indulging in these things because they're animals or something. You know what I mean? Like I feel like what happens is like you go online and all these red pill and kind of other manosphere type people, they just like take videos of these particular types of women, like OnlyFans girls and stuff, and then they go look at all the women in the world, and like they don't talk to like normal people, like um, that's really what I see. Because like if you walk outside and touch grass, like these you rarely see these people that they always put on their channels. Like I don't think I've ever ran into a fresh and fit girl. Like yeah, I'm fresh and fit, or I don't think I've ever ran into like one of these OnlyFan girls walking down the street or something. Like you know what I mean? Like with these ridiculously crazy views. Like I've never seen that unless you go to like a nightclub or something. Like when I was younger, when I wasn't a Muslim, unless you go like those certain places. So I feel like these men who are seeing all of this, it's because they're going to specific locations and engaging in that culture only. Like a lot of these guys, like for example, I've noticed like a lot of these red pill idiots, like they live in Miami or something or Las Vegas, and I'm thinking to myself like, yeah, you're gonna see all that stuff because you live in Miami. But like, I lived in Miami when I was younger, and I will tell you, yeah, Miami. But if you walk outside Miami, people aren't like that for the most part. Like, it just doesn't exist. It's right. So these guys must be like every day they're like going to like nightclubs and bars and talking to girls. And that just makes obviously that then their whole perception is going to be, oh, all women are whores and money, gold diggers and yeah. Well, actually, many parts of Florida are do it, but Miami is a different story. Miami is like Sin City. Inshallah, we'll talk again. Assalamu alaikum. It's like imagine if your whole perception of the UAE was what you saw in Dubai. Okay, that's the analogy that I'm making here. Imagine if like all these red pill guys just lived in Dubai, and then they're like, yeah, the whole Arab world, all the women are whores, right? It's like, no, astaghfirullah, like how dare you? Um, what if I'm a sincere misogynist? What does that mean? Why would you be a misogynist? And you have to understand too, like when you talk about Western culture, what are you talking about? Because like there are different cultures within the West. Of course, there are certain overarching norms, but there are like immigrants live in the West. Like are you saying that all their women are like this too? I mean, there are people raised in different parts of the country where their values are very different. Like in the South and the North, or have very different perceptions of things. Even the West and East Coast have different perceptions of things. The average woman, but where's the statistics for that? And if you're looking at statistics for that, even if you have them, how do you compare that to men? Because I can guarantee one thing: it's not like one is really superior to the other when it comes to certain demographics, right? And certain things that are happening. Like if the women are sleeping around, it's the guys too, because you need two of them to make that statistic work, right? It's not like the women are just, having sex with ghosts and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Um, so it's like, what's going on here, right? Unless it's with another woman, but obviously that's also a rarity compared to the majority. Um, the women in nightclubs are the same ones who were at the library the next day. I don't know about that. I mean, everyone can go into a library, but if you're saying like all these women who are only engaging in fornication and are obsessed with material wealth and are like extremely superficial, usually those women are very uneducated and very low class. Whereas if I were to judge my students in the libraries, I'm sure maybe some of them go dancing here and there, I'm sure, because they're young kids, young people, but I would not like assume that, the graduate students and even the undergraduate students in the university are all engaged in this sort of behavior. Um, uh, and I wouldn't even know how many Muslim women are going to these things either. I don't look into that. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's no apparent measurement for any of this stuff. It's literally a perspective that is being projected upon the majority of women that has, I don't think, any real backing or any substantial backing. I think that you're just meeting maybe the wrong women, Shoaib, and maybe perhaps as well, maybe there could be, and I'm not saying this as an insult, I'm just saying this sincerely to you. Maybe you have negative experiences that you have internalized to a point where you're now projecting those negative experiences to every other woman. And maybe you're also being around certain women who do have negative features, and everyone does to some extent. But it could also be the case that you just need to realize that there are also some things about yourself that maybe also need to change for you to have a more positive perspective. You could be not tolerant of certain characteristics that maybe not all women share. I mean, women are just as varied as men in many respects, right? There are some bat crap insane women, and there are also some very calm and collected women. There are women who are more wise. There are some women who are more materialistic. There are women who are more motherly. There are women who are more, independent. They're just, women are humans, just like men, and men have various personalities as well, right? But I'm just saying, right? Like, something to consider. And I'm sure that when you meet somebody who fits your personality more, it'll be easier for you to comprehend that. The J word? Oh, jihad. No, not everything needs to be spoken about within a given context. I mean, like, you can talk about the virtues of jihad, but if it's not really addressing the concerns of the community that has at that time, then, it's not something that should be emphasized. It's not necessarily, I mean, this whole thing also, when you hear about compassionate moms not talking about all this stuff, it's like, well, why do you need to talk about the hudud in a Western society when you're the minority in a Western country? Why does that have to be emphasized? You're not going to implement it. That's more of a discussion between Faqih and Qadis anyway. So, like, why is this a thing? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? That's one example. But it's like, why is that even a thing? Well, not to fear death. Well, there are ways to address that concern. Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah. And I've heard it in many khutbah, actually. I don't know how the conversation's going here, but it is getting kind of late, so I'm going to dip soon. That said, I will leave you all with this. Thinking and understanding the world around us is not easy. Let's just be honest. Even for geniuses. People say, well, the genius is easy. No, not really. Because even they have limitations. And they're obsessed with certain things, right? That they can't solve, or they have to spend years on dealing with. My point that I want to make is that stop wasting time on small bits of things, and stop assuming that you don't need to do a lot to get a lot. Just like everything we do in life, we work hard for whether it be for material gain or for virtue. Knowledge itself also has to be taken seriously, and information that we process has to be processed well, right? So my advice to you all would be not to look at everything in such a very simplistic manner, and to do your best to understand that there are nuances, and not to be ashamed of the fact that there are good and bad in everything, and that some things are difficult to comprehend. It's okay. You know, it's okay. It's okay not to know everything. It's okay to have difficulty comprehending a subject. It's okay that something is complex. It's better that way, because at least now you have a very mature and realistic perspective of what that thing is or what those things are. And then you can actually find a real solution, or at least go down the path of finding a real solution for that thing. But if you take everything in this very simplistic fashion, you're never going to find a solution for everything, because you're just building a caricature that's easy to destroy, when reality is not like that. Reality is not easy, right? So whatever ideology it may be, or whatever thing it may be that is offensive to you or appears to contradict or go against your values, understand that it's never as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. And if you really want to strengthen your faith and you really want to have pride in something, it needs to be in something that is grounded. Okay? Something that is real. Not something that is convenient. It takes time and energy and effort. I know, and it stinks. But I promise you that if you invest and do your best to steel man and to understand the world as it really is, you will benefit more in the long run. Okay? So stop rushing. All right. You all take care. Jazakallah khair for listening to me to rant. May you all have a good evening or morning wherever you are, or afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.